The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Open. Sign up the promo code SGPN to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football in the NFL with Rhythm. Get your set in your future all day. Going to sportsgambling.com/RETHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday morning, roughly midnight Eastern Time on October 19th. I'm always Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode because it's time to get into the semifinals in Almaty, in Stockholm, and in Antwerp. So we are going to get into each of those 6 matches in a second. For that, though, do want to remind you once again to like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder that you can also show support by leaving a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. So if you are watching the podcast on either the live stream on YouTube, the video afterwards, or maybe even through Twitter, you can show support by once again liking and subscribing on YouTube, or you can wait for me to edit it and watch it or listen to it on Apple or Spotify. But when you do, please leave a rating and a review. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store. A lot of great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch on the SGPN merch store. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, all high quality, or affordable, different colors of the shirts too. So a lot of options. Find yourself something you might like. Plus, a reminder, we do have a current contest going on with the NBA Gambling Podcast, a show that I'm also on. NBA season does start in about 3-4 days. Actually starts on October 22nd, and the NBA Gambling Podcast is hosting a win totals competition. The winner does get a $250 SGPN gift card. Head to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA contest to enter. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA contest. And a reminder, you can enter until the season starts. Also, please remember to like, subscribe on YouTube, and a reminder, please check out Spotify to leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Only you can help prevent corporate gambling from taking over. Anyway, starting off with the actual recap from the lock and dog picks from the last episode. Overall, has been doing pretty well, and we ended up having a decent day in the quarterfinal matches. Now, for the lock, wasn't close. Did have the over 22.5 games in the Cerundolo and Shevchenko match. Didn't get there as Cerundolo killed them. Is what it is. We saw a competitive matchup against them about a week and a half ago. Not the case in this one. Thought Shevchenko would look a bit sharper. He didn't. Cerundolo's forehand was on, and he ended up dominating, so ended up picking up a loss there. But had a nice win with the dog. We had Gaston +5 at even money. Keep the damn games. Gaston's going to win outright. Nice job by Gaston to get the job done. De Minaur, I said did not look 100% in the first round against Baena, and he looked a bit rusty to start. We saw Gaston open a big lead. Then he got injured. He kind of hurt his calf, I guess. I couldn't really tell what exactly he injured, but he ended up going into the I should say off court for a couple of minutes. Then he came back, and you had a marathon on your hands. Looked like De Minaur was going to win, had some chances in the last set, but did not convert. Then eventually Gaston did break in the final possible game to break in as he won 7-5. So nice win there outright for Gaston. As for us, never in doubt, sweat-free winner there. And as a result, we ended up picking up a chop with the lock and the dog picks. Now, getting into the actual recap of what happened on Friday. Starting off with Almaty, we did lean to Diallo against Tabilo, but we did like the over in that one as well. That got there. Didn't bet it, but we thought Diallo was alive, and we thought that the over was a good look, and that got there as the match was a fun one, but it was a Diallo win. Said before, Cerundolo killed Shevchenko 6-2, 6-3. So Vukic beat Tiafoe. Did like Vukic to keep the match interesting. Thought Tiafoe was too big of a favorite in that one, and he was. Tiafoe's going to Tiafoe, and he messed around and he found out. So either way, point is, nice win there for Vukic, and I thought that Kashanov would end up dominating against Zukayev, I mean, and that got the job done pretty easily as he got the job done 6-2, 6-4. No offense to Zukayev, but he was pretty fortunate that Makic retired mid-match and Kashanov buried him. So overall, pretty decent reads there for the 4 matches in Almaty. As for Antwerp, we thought Agut was actually live against Felix, and he won outright. A very fun match. Did win the third set via tiebreak 8-6. Classic Felix being an idiot, but Batista Agut's been good, and it was a nice win for him there. As for Gaston, we like the games as the dog. That got there as he won outright. Dalheshka would beat Tsitsipas. That got there too. Tsitsipas didn't play that badly, just Leheshka's better at this stage right now in the season, and he served very well. Tsitsipas really had no response when it came to returning. We know the backhand return has been kind of a mess all season long, and Tsitsipas had a grand total of 0 break points in the entire match. So Leheshka won 91% of the first serve points and 60% of the second serve points. It's pretty tough to lose when you do that. And we saw Tsitsipas look good, not good enough as he lost in straight sets. And you saw Bergs lose to Giron handily. Thought he'd win with the crowd support. Didn't happen as Giron killed him as he ended up beating the home country guy 6-2, 6-2. As for Stockholm, thought that Kekmanovic would keep it interesting against Paul. He did for one set as it was 11-9 in the first set. Then Paul kind of buried him as he won the second set 6-2. Buck Kekmanovic had some chances. He did have, I believe it was, I'm trying to remember, he had one set point, I believe, 8-7 in the breaker, and then eventually Paul converted what felt like his 50th chance, but it turned out to be his 5th set point, and then he eventually won easily in the second set. The biggest upset of the day, though, you had Wawrinka again the job done against Rublev as he won in 2 tiebreaks. Fun match, competitive. You saw both guys serve pretty well as there were only 2 breaks in the entire match, and it was a back-to-back break situation early in the second set. Point is, though, Wawrinka just looked very good. I thought the firepower translated well. I thought fatigue would be an issue after the marathon against Fokina. Didn't happen. He had 14 aces. He was really, really sharp, and he got the job done. So nice win there for Wawrinka. We'll see what happens, but do want to point out Rublev entered the event late because he was trying to basically stat pad his overall points to help him get into Turin, and then he lost to Wawrinka, which is pretty funny. But either way, nice win there for old man Wawrinka as he got the job done there. Either way, though, moving on to the next match, you had Greek Sport ended up beating Rude, which I did like. That was actually the runner-up for my dog play, and then I'm not taking it as I went with Gaston instead. But Greek Sport I thought would win. I think his serve and his overall firepower is trying to well to the courts here in Stockholm, but I didn't think that Rude played that badly. I just thought that Greek Sport was once again just in good form, and Rude was a bit of a head case entering the event. He was in bad form. Thought he played fine. He had a really bad service game to end the first set. But Greek Sport I just thought serves well, didn't get broken in the entire match, and eventually got the job done there in straight sets. And you saw Dimitrov kill Stricker. Not surprised. Dimitrov's the better player, and Dimitrov just had more variety. Stricker, I think, is fine. But in terms of talent, he's nowhere close to Dimitrov in terms of talent. And Dimitrov was kind of toying with him, especially in that second set. He was up 4-0. It was over pretty quickly. But either way, nice win there for Dimitrov and a pretty, I'd say, straightforward group of matches there in Stockholm, as you saw all 4 matches end in straight sets. See some comments, though, quickly, just going through those. See some comments from Wipeout talking about the dog pick. Thank you. Appreciate that. Besides that, Kashanov did look good. Classic Felix, yeah, sounds about right. Shout out to Adrian. Thanks for stopping in. Hopefully you enjoy the show. I'm going to get into the match against Sarundalo and Diallo in a second. I do the recap first, then I get into the matches after the first break. Besides that, what do I think about the women's tennis? I covered for the main events. Truth is, I follow men's a lot more than women's. It's extremely unpredictable. I don't really trust anybody, so it's kind of difficult to fully, I'd say, find angles I have a lot of confidence with women's tennis because you could see anybody unravel. I mean, we saw Goff the other day lose a pretty big lead against Sabalenka, had like 21 double faults. She's number 3 in the world. You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like it's just very difficult to actually find women's players that I can trust on a regular basis. So if you do like shopping around, trying to find good underdog prices, live women's tennis is really good for that. But as for pre-match opinions and for bets, I have a hard time trusting anybody enough to actually bet women's tennis. So I kind of stay away. But of course, I do episodes for the Grand Slams, and I'll get into that too. But for the most part, I tend to stay away from women's tennis, mostly a pretty big men's tennis guy. If you want some women's tennis thoughts, though, check out the actual tennis Discord on the SGPN Discord server, because we do have a lot of women's tennis bettors on there, and they do give out picks a lot. So I do kind of prefer to go into the men's markets more than the women's markets. See some questions, though, about tennis and basketball. I mean, tennis I follow every single day because you have so many tournaments going on, and of course, basketball, you have an off season. So it is a lot easier to get into tennis because it just never stops. Of course, you have the month off at the end of the year, but you get my point. Basketball I follow a lot, but when it comes to actual game breakdowns, it's very difficult to give out picks the night before because the injury report for the NBA is just an absolute circus. And you don't really know who's playing until about 20 minutes before the game anyway. So it's really difficult to actually give out bets early for basketball. And that's why we do a lot of episodes for the morning of. We're trying to hope for actual injury news. For basketball, though, the injury report is just an absolute joke. And they take way too long to actually confirm people. And, half the people are going to be sitting anyway. So the injury report kind of annoys me. But I definitely follow tennis a bit more than basketball. It's close. But tennis is definitely one of my favorite sports to follow. And it also helps you have a lot of unique times for the matches taking place early in the morning, or even if you want to go mid-afternoon. Not much competition for sports at that time frame. So I follow tennis a lot, follow basketball too, baseball, football. I follow everything. But tennis does definitely, I'd say, top the charts for all those sports. Anyway, before we get into any of the actual matches for Saturday for the semis, do remind me once again that we are brought to you by Nordic Fantasy because they have a lot of great items on their pick-a menu. They have the NFL, college football, MLB, MMA. You have NASCAR, WNBA, and tennis, of course. Boosttober is upon us, which means you're getting a spooky amount of profit boosts and much more. They also have a great deal going on with the NBA because the NBA is tipping off, and every NBA pick'em entry from the 19th to the 27th does get a boost automatically. Use your specials and boosts on Flex entries. And a reminder that for the upcoming week in the NFL season, you know what? I think I am going to go with Drake May. I'll go with Drake May higher, half an interception in that game against Jacksonville. You're looking at a guy who's kind of injured. He had an MRI earlier this week. We're looking at a guy who had a couple picks in his first start. No offensive line. They can't really run the ball because Stevenson's banged up. I like Drake May interception in that game against Jacksonville. But a reminder, when you do sign up for your new account, use the promo code SGPN to claim a special first-time deposit offer up to $1K in bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping what happened on Friday. Time to move on to the Saturday matches. Starting off with the first set of matches, you have the semis in Almaty. For this one, you have Diallo taking on Cerundolo at around 7 a.m. in the morning. You have Diallo at about minus 125. You have Cerundolo at about plus 105. For the spread, -1 for Diallo, +1 for Cerundolo. For the games, you have around 22.5 or 23.5 for set spread. The over 2.5 sets is plus 125. For the actual spread, you have Diallo -1.5 sets at plus 200, and you have Cerundolo to win in straight sets at plus 260. Now, Diallo's been very good, and I do think that his game translates better to the hard courts. Cerundolo's been more of a clay guy over the years, but he has been good so far in the event. We saw him win in straight sets against Engel, relative unknown, and we saw him beat Shevchenko in straight sets on Friday. Diallo, though, has been great. We saw him win in straight sets against O'Connell, won in straight sets against Chorich, and he beat Tabilo in 3 sets. I think based on form, I probably would go with Diallo. I just think his serve is better than Cerundolo's, and I do think that he will be able to manufacture more free points, especially with the fast-paced courts here in Almaty. I think Diallo is a worthy favorite here. You could argue that Cerundolo has the more proven track record, but not really on hard court. He's always been more of a clay guy, even as a grass title, but you are looking at a guy who has not done much on hard court in his career. Diallo, I do think, is a solid, once again, young Canadian player. I think that he has a lot of firepower. It's going to be fun. Should be a close match. I do like the over. I see a pretty similar match to what we saw in the Tabilo match on Friday, where it's kind of unpredictable, goes to 3 sets, and I just think that eventually Diallo outlasts Cerundolo. But it comes down to unforced errors. We know Cerundolo is a bit of a loose cannon at times, and when he loses rhythm on either the forehand or the backhand, he starts spraying unforced errors all over the court. And I do think that Diallo will be able to limit his, and I think that Cerundolo will start going for a lot of big shots in general. I see a lot of mistakes being made, and I think that Diallo eventually wins. Give me Diallo at around -125 on the money line in this one. Moving on to the next one. I'm going to look at, and I also like the over, by the way, at around 2.5 sets at plus 125. Moving on to the next one, you have Khachanov against Vukic. For this one, I am going to go with, well, I got to mention the odds first. Khachanov -180. You have Vukic at plus 160. For the game spread, -2.5 for Khachanov, plus 2.5 for Vukic. The over-under is around 22.5 or 23. For the set spread, you have Khachanov in straight sets at plus 130. You have Vukic to win a set at -160, and Vukic in straight sets is plus 350. The over 2.5 sets, by the way, is plus 135. 2 head-to-head meetings, both of them were a bit, I'd say, competitive because each of them did not end in straight sets. Face-off this year in Den Bosch on grass, Vukic did win in a final set tiebreak. Face-off in the Australian Open a couple years ago in 2021, and Khachanov did win in 4. So historically competitive matches, a couple breakers in there, and Khachanov been good so far in the event. Beat Virtanen in 2 tiebreaks and ended up beating Zukayev in the last match, which was pretty straightforward, but a pretty lucky draw. Supposed to be Makic, and he got gifted a guy who is really not, I don't want to say worth a damn because it sounds harsh, but he beat a relative unknown. We'll put it that way. So a pretty easy draw when you factor in the 2 guys that he faced off against. Vukic, though, won in straight sets against Manarino. We know that Manarino has not exactly been in great form this season, defending champion, though. So he has been good in this event in the past. And he beat Tiafoe in straight sets, which was competitive, especially the 13-11 tiebreak, but got the job done there. So I think we'd agree that Vukic has faced off against better competition so far in this event. Now, I think Khachanov should win. However, I don't think it's going to be easy because, once again, Khachanov hasn't played anybody. And we know that Khachanov been a bit of a head case here. I think Vukic has a good serve in general. He's got firepower. I see a decent amount of holds in this matchup. I don't mind a potential breaker fest here. Maybe a couple tie breaks, a 7-5 in there, so I'm on the over in terms of games. But I like the overall value with the over 2.5 sets at plus 135. Give me a competitive matchup. I think Vukic has faced off against better competition. He's been good, and I think Kashanov has been fine, but he hasn't really been tested yet. And I do think it's going to be a better test here. But the two meetings in their careers, including the one meeting this season on grass, did go to a bit of length as neither match ended in straight sets. Give me a close one. Give me the over 2.5 sets here at plus 135 for this one. Moving on to the next event that we're going to talk about. You have Stockholm, which is starting at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. For this one, you have Wawrinka taking on Paul. For this one, Paul's a massive favorite, minus 425. He's about minus 4 on the spread, plus 345 for Wawrinka, and plus 4 on the spread there. For the over-under games, you have around 22.5. For the set spread, you have Paul to win in straight sets at minus 140. Wawrinka to win a set is plus 110. For the over 2.5 sets, I have plus 165. So for this one, Wawrinka's been a pleasant surprise to make a deep run. He had not won back-to-back matches since the U.S. Open last year, and then he's won 3 straight, including a win against a top 10 guy, fighting for a potential spot in Turin. So Rublev was motivated. It wasn't like Rublev was, once again, kind of off the back of a long tournament run, and maybe he was exhausted. No, he just went in there and beat Rublev. I thought he just overpowered him. I thought the serve was good, and it seems like he's very comfortable so far on the courts here in Stockholm. Now, Paul has been good too. We did see him win comfortably in the first round against Degir. Did go to a final set breaker, but he was winning for the majority of that match, and then it got a bit dicey in the second set. Either way, though, you had the opposite in the last match against Kecmanovic, as the first set was a very, very close one, 7-6, 11-9 in the tiebreak, and then he won the second set, 6-2. Head-to-head, though, is a bit dated. Faced off in London on grass about 2 years ago. Paul won in straight sets, and they faced off in pairs in 2020, and Wawrinka did win in 3. So can't really use those for actual reference, but for the, I'd say, matchup in itself, I think I'm going to take the games here. I think Paul's been good, but he's left the door open. We have seen some tie breaks, and I do think that he is much better than Kecmanovic and than Degir, for example. I know Kecmanovic gave him problems in the past, but he was also off a marathon against Jari, so I wonder if fatigue was an issue. Wawrinka, though, he's been good. I mean, beat Fokina, ended up beating Rublev. I think he could hang in there. 4's a lot of games. I mean, we took Gaston yesterday on a similar premise. We thought de Minaur would probably win. Didn't happen. But we thought that it was a lot of games, and it felt like a bit of a disrespectful line there. Wawrinka's been good. He's got the firepower. Serve's been good. If he serves relatively well, you have a good chance at pushing or even winning. So there is a chance you even get there if he doesn't even win a set. 7-6, 6-4, you still win. I like the games here. I think 4 is too many. I'll go with Wawrinka plus the games on that one. Don't mind the over, but I think Paul can still win straight sets. 22.5 games, though. If you want it, the over's at plus 104. Don't hate that. I see a close matchup, though. Paul might win. If Wawrinka won, though, I wouldn't be shocked. I think 425, though, is massive for this actual price. I know Paul's a former champion here, but I do think that Wawrinka 345 feels very, very big, considering the fact he just beat a top 10 player. I'd have Paul at like minus 250. 425 is huge. Like, I got to take the games here. Then the spread's too big. Give me Wawrinka to keep this match close, and I'll go with the games as a result. And moving on to the last match for Stockholm on Saturday, you have a matchup between Griekspoor and Dimitrov. For this one, Dimitrov's about minus 215. You have Griekspoor at plus 185. For the over-under, you have about 23.5 games. For the game spread, minus 2.5 for Dimitrov and plus 2.5 for Griekspoor. So for this one, looking at the head-to-head, you have seen Dimitrov win the only meeting, face off this year in the U.S. Open, and that was a bloodbath. Dimitrov won 6-3, 6-3, 6-1. Griekspoor, though, has recently regained his form. Saw him win in the last round against Ruud in straight sets. Saw him beat Fernley, who was on a massive winning streak in the previous round in straight sets, and he beat Kotal, defending runner-up, in the first round in straight sets. So he's been good. Firepower's been effective. Dimitrov, though, has been solid as well. I think Dimitrov is the more talented player. He looked good against Stricker, but I like the over here. I think that Griekspoor has the overall serving ability and the ground stroke, especially on hardcore indoor events, which has been kind of his bread and butter. I see a very close matchup here. I think Dimitrov might win. 215, though, feels a bit steep to me. Griekspoor I gave out to win the event, so I'm not going to suddenly panic and switch gears. I think he might lose, but I think that the line's too big. I'd have Dimitrov at minus 180. I think 215 is too big, so I'll go with Griekspoor for the value, but I am going to go with the over. I see a close match, probably a breaker in there. Griekspoor served very well so far on this event, and returning-wise, he's fine. could be better, so I can see a breaker or two. Give me the over, and I will go with the dog to keep this match competitive in this one. Moving on to the two matches in Antwerp. For this one, you have a match between Agut and Gaston. Two guys you didn't expect to see in the semis. For this one, though, you have Agut at around minus 240. You have Gaston at about plus 200. For the game spread, you have minus 4.5 for Agut, 3.5 for Agut, and you have plus 3.5 for Gaston. For the over-under in games, you have around 22.5. Now, interesting path for both guys. Agut, we saw have a marathon against Felix, which he won, and we saw him have a couple of easy wins against Echeverry in straight sets, and we saw him beat Van Asch in straight sets. As for Gaston, he has been the marathon man, has gone to a deciding set in all three rounds. Beat Vatutin in the first round in 3, ended up beating Navone in a final set breaker, and he beat Dimenauer 7-5 in the final set. Now, he did get injured mid-match, and it seemed like he fought his way through it. The movement wasn't as crisp as it was earlier, but I do think that for a matchup like this, expect the unexpected. Gaston hit that crazy overhead passing shot, which is wild. And I don't mean overhead like a full slam. I mean like overhead, like running backwards. It was a crazy shot. I recommend looking it up. The issue, though, with both guys, really not great at serving. And I see a lot of breaks in this overall matchup. But I think when it comes to consistency, I do trust Agut a bit more. I think Agut is a guy that has the overall, I'd say, blend between, I don't want to say firepower, but just consistency with, I'd say, calculated risk. I'll use that term. Gaston can be a little bit dangerous with the shot selection, and I do think that Agut is a bit more reliable if I had to compare the two of them. I don't know how injured Gaston is, though. He fought through it. He ended up winning. But I mentioned before, I picked Gaston to cover against Dimenauer because I thought he was below 100%. So he beat a compromised opponent in 3 sets and kind of got injured in the process. Agut, as far as I know, has been healthy. We saw him beat Felix, who's a former champion here. Like how he's played. I'll go with Agut. I think it's going to be close, though, but I like the breaks in this one. I see a ton of breaks in this matchup, but I think I'm going to go with the games here. I'll go with Agut minus 3.5. I don't feel great about it, to be honest. Tough to find value. I think 240 is pretty steep, but I don't know how injured Gaston actually is. So it's a bit tricky. I think it's going to be a very, very ugly match in terms of actual serving quality. I see a lot of breaks again. But I think Agut's a bit better at serving, and I think that he's a bit more reliable. So give me Agut in that one, and I think Gaston might struggle physically as the match goes on. Moving on to the last match of the episode, you have Lehecka against Giron. Pretty underrated matchup here. Lehecka, though, is around minus 190, and you're looking at the money line for Giron, plus 165. For the game spread, you have minus 3 for Lehecka, plus 3 for Giron. The over and under games is set at 22.5. Now, Lehecka's been great so far in the event. He better be. We got him to win the event, so hopefully he gets the job done in the next 2 rounds, but Lehecka we like because he's got a lot of firepower, and the courts are pretty fast here in Antwerp. Giron looked great against Bergs. Bergs is a player that I think should be better than he actually is, but it feels like he just can't piece it together for an entire event. For this actual matchup, though, I think Lehecka is better. If you're asking me right now who's the better player, he's ranked about 14 spots higher. Faced off 3 times, and we saw them face off a couple times last year. Giron did win on clay in straight sets in the French Open. Faced off on grass in Stuttgart last year, though, Lehecka did win in 3. Only meeting on hard court was in Paris in 2022, and we saw Lehecka win in straight sets. I think Giron's been good. Don't mind the potential over here, but I do think that Lehecka's the better player. So tough to find value on this one. I'd probably lean to the over and hope for a breaker in there. I don't mind Lehecka team total over if it was 12.5 at a reasonable price. I think Lehecka's better, though, and I do think that he'll win. But I think Giron could be dangerous. We saw him win a title this year on grass in Newport. Saw him make a final in Texas as he lost to Paul in the final. He's had a good year, though he's been underrated. Lehecka, of course, won a title back in Australia earlier in January. But I think Lehecka, when healthy, is a top 25 caliber player. Great serve. Said before, Tsitsipas had no break points against him. I think that's the difference. Giron's fine at serving. He's not great. I think Lehecka is a very underrated server. Give me Lehecka based on the serving differential. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the 6 matches on Saturday. Now it's time for the actual lock and dog picks, but want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm is a great source for you if you want to try out gambling models, because they can help provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive models in seconds, get predictions on every game with money line spreads, totals, and props, build your own model, copy one of the top performing models on the leaderboard, or press build model for me, or Rhythm will immediately give you predictions on every game and player props. And they also have a bunch of stats, research, and analysis to help you become a better. Plus, a reminder, you can check out the platform for free. 7-day free trial by going to sportsgambling.com/Rhythm, sportsgambling.com/RATH, We're also brought to you by BetUS. BetUS has been around for more than 30 years. You can get lightning fast payouts, and you can use the deposit using crypto. US players are always welcome. They have a giveaway right now. Sign up and deposit $100 and automatically get entered for a chance to win a 1960 Ford Mustang. Use our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus for first 3 deposits. Once again, 125%. Great deal. Go to sportsgamepodcast.com to BetUS. Promo code SGPN, and we send you BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the Saturday semifinal matches in Almaty, Stockholm, and Antwerp. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to go to Stockholm. I am going to go to a matchup between Paul and Wawrinka. Give me the games here. I'll go with the +4 at around -125. Wawrinka's dropped one set in the entire event, and he's been good. We saw him beat difficult competition. Fokina can be dangerous. Yes, he chokes every match, but he's still a talented player. Saw him win that one. Saw him once again beat a top 10 player in Rublev in the last round. Saw him in the first round beat Nagashima. So once again, beating pretty good competition, and he's only dropped one set, like the form that he's been in. Paul's been fine. Kekmanovic off a long 3-set marathon was a good win, but not the most impressive, and Desir has been kind of a mess all year. So I think that Paul has been a bit vulnerable, went to a breaker against Kekmanovic and against Desir. I can see at least one breaker here, but I think that Wawrinka is serving well enough to keep this match close. Might not win it, but the line feels disrespectful. Give me Wawrinka to lose, but to lose close, and I think that 4 games is too many. Give me 4 at around -125 as the lock. For the dog, I am going to go to the matchup taking place in Almaty, and for this one, I am going to go with Vukic and Khachanov. For this one, give me the over 2.5 sets at +135. For this one, each of the 2 head-to-head meetings did not end in straight sets. Face off this year on grass, that went to 3 sets as well. I see a close one. Khachanov's been good, hasn't played anybody worth a damn in the event, so not sure if that's actually a sign that he's playing well or if he just had a very easy draw. Supposed to have Makic. Instead, he ended up getting a relative unknown Kazakh, and he ended up getting Virtanen. And that was not easy with 2 breakers. So once again, he's looked fine, not amazing. Vukic, though, has been good. Saw him beat Manarino, defending champion, in straight sets, and he beat Tiafoe in straight sets. So I think that this match is going to be close. I see a very, I'd say, competitive back-and-forth battle. A lot of holds, but I do think that the over 2.5 sets has value, especially based on the head-to-head history, with each of the 2 matches end up not ending in straight sets. Give me the over 2.5 sets as my dog. So once again, my picks for Saturday, the lock's going to be on Wawrinka +4 at -125, and my dog's going to be on Khachanov and Vukic over 2.5 sets at +135. That's going to wrap it up. Reminder back once again for the finals in Almaty, in Stockholm, and in Antwerp. So stay tuned for the next episode. But until then, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show, WNBA show, and find me on the MLB show as well. A reminder as well, check out the podcast either on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple. And when you do, please leave a rating and a review or like and subscribe to the channel. And also check out the merch store for some great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. Till next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.